B'siyata d'shmai, we're going to learn Rosh Hashanah Daf Tezayin. We're going to start from the next Mishnah at the very top of the Amud. Says the Mishnah, Ba'arba prokim ha'olam nidoin, the world is judged 4 times, at 4 intervals, at 4 stages during the year. B'Pesach al ha'tvua. On the Yom Tov of Pesach, the world is judged regarding the grains. Ba'atzeres al peris ha'ilon, regarding the fruits, they are judged on Shavuos. Rosh Hashanah, on the 1st of Tishri, Kol boye olam oivrim lefonov, all the people of the world, they pass before Hashem, k'bnei meroin. We'll see in the Gemara what that means. Shanemar, as it says in the Pasuk, hayoytzer yachad livbam, that Hashem has fashioned their hearts all together. Hamevin el kol maseim, he understands all their deeds. U'b'chagen, on the Yom Tov of Sukkos, nidoinin al hamayim, the world is judged for water. Says the Gemara, Hai tvua, when it says in the Mishnah that tvua, meaning grain, is judged on Pesach. So this tvua, what stage of tvua are we talking about here? Because in the Mishnah it seems that the tvua is judged, every stalk, every grain is judged once on Pesach. The question is, what grain are we talking about? Are we talking about the grains that are already ripe and are about to be reaped, and they are standing in the fields? Kol hani haraftaki da'odu Allah, all those occurrences that befell these grains up until that point, from the time they were sown until the time they're ready to be reaped, Amos isdoin. When was that decreed? When were they judged on that? Elo tvua de mizdaro. It must be talking about the grains that are being sown. That means the Pesach before they were sown. That's the Pesach. That is when the grains that are going to be sown. That is when they are judged. And now the Gemara is saying that lememra dechad dino mizdana. From the Mishnah, it seems that the grains are judged just once, on Pesach. We just established in the Gemara that the Pesach before they were sown, that's when it was decreed what would be with these grains that are going to be sown in Cheshvan, many months after Pesach. Asks the Gemara, Votanya, we saw in the Brisa, Tvua she'ira bo keri oy oinus. If there were these grains that befell on them, either carry some disaster which destroyed the grains. Rashi says borod or shidofoin, it's floods or hail, or oinus, or some other violence befell them and something happened to them. Then koydem Pesach, if what happened to them is before Pesach, nidoinis l'shavar, then it was the Pesach before this incident happened that was decreed that this would happen. Le'achar ha-Pesach. But if it happened after Pesach, we know that the grains are cut down after Pesach. So if something happened before they were cut down, nidoinis le'abo, then they were judged they were decreed on these grains on the Pesach after the previous one, which is the Pesach just before they were going to be reaped. They were going to be cut down. So you see that any one grain actually is judged twice. Once the Pesach before it was sown, and once the Pesach before it's being reaped and harvested. And this seems in the Mishnah that there's only one. And similarly continues the Brisa, Odom, every person, she'ira bo keri oy oinus, if something happened to a person, if it happened to him before Yom Kippur, we're going to learn later on in the Sugyas that Yom Kippur is a pivotal time in the judgment of a person, even though the Mishnah here says that we're judged on Rosh Hashanah, but the last word is not till Yom Kippur. So if something happened before Yom Kippur, it was obviously decreed the previous Yom Kippur. If something happens after Yom Kippur, it was obviously the Yom Kippur that just passed that decreed what was going to happen now. So you see that people are judged continuously, and so too grains. Since there are 2 Pesachs that every grain actually passes by 2 Pesachs. That means 2 periods between Pesach and Pesach. There's one period between Pesach and Pesach where they are planted in Cheshvan, and another period between the Pesach and when they are harvested just after Pesach. And it would seem in our Mishnah that there's only one judgment, one decree on the Tvua. It obviously seems from this brisa that indeed the Tvua is judged twice, not like you assumed from the Mishnah that it's just once. Omar Abaye. Abaye says that why it's good to know that is Hilkoch Chichozi Inish de Matzlach Zaro Afelo. There are certain types of crops and certain types of harvests that are very slow growing. For example, the wheat, spelt, and they are typically planted much in Cheshvan, and they become ripe very slowly. And if he sees that the crops, these chitim and kisemes, the spelt and the wheat, are growing very well, the matzlach, they are very successful, those zara afelo, the slow-growing produce, then liktim lizra cherpa. Cherpa are the fast-growing crops. For example, barley grows much faster, and typically barley is planted in Shvat Adar, very close to Pesach. If you saw that the crops that you planted in Cheshvan post last year's Pesach was very successful, it seems that last year's judgment, last Pesach, was a good one for you. So that barley, plant it instead of Shvat Adar, you should plant it earlier. You should do it quicker. Likadim, you should bring forward, you should hurry to plant the barley, in order that they should be relatively mature and grown by the time the following Pesach comes, and by that time they will already have grown to a healthy stage in the maturing of the barley, and then it's much harder for them to get ruined. Kodim solik, in order that they should already have started growing well, and in the hope that they will grow well, because the last Pesach was a good judgment, they will grow well before the coming Pesach, where the judgment may not be as good as it was the year before. Continues the Gemara. Mani masnisin. This Mishnah, where it says that the people are judged on Rosh Hashanah, all of us, all the people in the world, pass before Hashem, k'bnei meroin, which we're not going to learn now, but we're going to see later in the Gemara what that means, is every Rosh Hashanah on the 1st of Tishri. And this Mishnah is Loi Reb Meir, V'loi Reb Yehuda, V'loi Reb Yosi, V'loi Reb Nosson. We're going to see a four-way machlokas, and this Mishnah seems to be neither. The Tanya we learned in a brisa. Hakol, all the matters are nidoinin b'Rosh Hashanah, everything is judged on Rosh Hashanah, Ugzar din shalem nichtam b'Yom HaKippurim. And the decree is signed on Yom Kippur. Divi Reb Meir, that's the opinion of Reb Meir. Rabbi Yehuda says, Hakol nidoinim, all the people are judged b'Rosh Hashanah. Ugzar din shalem nichtam echod bizmanoi. With all matters are judged on Rosh Hashanah, and the Gzar din, then each thing is in its time. B'Pesach ala Tvua, regarding the grains, the produce, it will be nechtam, it will be the decree will be signed on Pesach, ba'atzeres al peres ilon, on Shavuos the fruits, b'chag nidoinim al hamayim, and Sukkos regarding the water. V'odom, regarding people, nidoim b'Rosh Hashanah, u'gzar din shaloi nechtam b'Yom HaKippurim. As far as man is concerned, it's the same as Reb Meir, that the judgment is on Rosh Hashanah and it's signed on Yom Kippur. Rabbi Yosi says, Odom nidoin b'chol yom, that man is judged every single day. Shenemer, as it says in the pasuk, Vatifkedenu, that you will inspect him labakorim every morning. So a person is inspected and obviously judged every day. Reb Nosson says even more than that. Odom nidoin b'chol shah, every hour a person is judged. Shenemer, as it says in the pasuk, l'ragoyim tivchanenu, that every moment he is examined. So, in our Mishnah, which opinion does our Mishnah follow? Are you going to say that this Mishnah is Rabbi Yehuda? And the Mishnah that splits things into four, it's Gzar Din. It's only talking about the Gzar Din, which is when the decree is signed and finalized, which is what Rabbi Yehuda says, that Nidoin b'Rosh Hashanah Gzar Din Shalem Nechtam Kol echod ve'echod bizmanoi. And then that's what we see in the Mishnah. So maybe the Mishnah is talking about the Gzar Din. If so, we have a problem, because when is the Gzar Din of Adam? On Yom Kippur. The Mishnah says regarding man, Rosh Hashanah ihachi kashi Adam. Omar Rava. So Rava said as follows: Hi Tana deber b'Shmuelhi. The Tana of our Mishnah is indeed none of the four we mentioned. It's Tana deber b'Shmuel. The Tana deber b'Shmuel. Barba prokim o'ilam nidoin b'Pesach halatvo b'Atzeres al peres ha'ilon b'Chag nidoin al mayim v'Adam nidoin b'Rosh Hashanah Gzar Din sheloi nechtam b'Yom Kippurim. Exactly like it says in our Mishnah. That means the Tana Deber B'Shmuel is similar to Rabbi Yehuda, just Rabbi Yehuda says that the 4 times in the year is when the decree is signed. And then we had the problem Adam. The Tana Deber B'Shmuel say no, the 4 times of the year is the 4 times where they are judged. In which case, man is also judged not on Yom Kippur but on Rosh Hashanah. It's just that the decree is signed on Yom Kippur, so this Mishnah is following the Tana Deber B'Shmuel. Continues the Gemara, Omer of Chizda, my Tama de Rabbi Yossi. What would be the source of Rabbi Yossi who says that a person is judged every single day? So, says the Gemara, he says what the source is. Vatifkedenu labekorim. He says that Hashem inspects people every single morning. Anan hocha komrinan. Rav Chizda says that my question wasn't what Rav Yossi's source was. He says what his source was. The question was, my Tama le omakar of Nosen. Why doesn't he bring the part of the why doesn't he not bring the part of the pasuk that Reb Nosson brings? Because the pasuk goes vatifkadenu livikorim liragoyim tivchanenu. So why does Rabbi Yossi choose the vatifkadenu livikorim and not the liragoyim tivchanenu? Answers the Gemara. The reason is because bechina, he assumes that when it says regarding every moment liragoyim tivchanenu, it uses the term bechina, which we said was an examination. So bechina is a yuna be'almahi, because the tivchanenu is not a judgment. It's just he's just scrutinizing the deeds, but he's not actually making a judgment. And therefore, when we're talking about a judgment, it's vatifkedenu libekorim. So the Gemara says, Pekida, the word vatifkedenu nami yuna be'almahi also doesn't mean judging. It just means a type of inspection, a type of examination. Ella Omer of Chizda. So it says Rav Chizda that the source for Rabbi Yossi says is from the following pasuk. The pasuk says, La sois mishpat avdoi, and this is Shlomo HaMelech talking, referring to himself as a servant of Hashem. That Hashem does the judgment of his servant, or mishpat amo Yisrael, and the judgment of the nation of Klal Yisrael, of Dvar Yom B'Yomoy, every single day. So you see here that there's a judgment every single day. Now obviously from this pasuk in and of its own wouldn't be a source that Hashem judges every single day, because Rabbi Yossi doesn't bring this pasuk. He brings the pasuk of Vatifkedenu Livikorim. But Rabbi Yossi was obviously influenced by this pasuk, Dvar Yom B'Yomoy, to choose Vatifkedenu Livikorim as the source that a person is judged every day. And the Achronim here all discuss what does it mean that Rav Chizda is bringing a different pasuk to the one that Rabbi Yossi himself brought, and this is the basic reading of the Gemara. Continues the Gemara of Omer of Chizda. Melech v'tzibur, when you have a king who's going to be judged, and you have the community, the tzibur, the public who are being judged, Melech nichnas tchila ledin. Then the king is judged first, he goes in first. Shenemer, as it says in this pasuk we just mentioned now, La'asois mishpat avdoi, that Hashem first judges his servant, the king, or mishpat am Yisrael, and then after that he judges the rest of Klal Yisrael. My Tama, what would be the reason for this? Iba Yisema, you could explain it. Lav erach aro lemeisav malka avroi. It's not derech eretz. It's not correct behavior to let the king, so to speak, wait outside whilst the other people are being judged inside. That once the Hashem is judged all the people, then Hashem might be very angry, so to speak, because of all the averus that the people have done. And in order for the king to be judged before Hashem gets angry, the king gets judged first. Continues the Gemara, Omer of Yosef. Kaman matzlinon ha'idna aktsiri umari. Nowadays, we know in the Tefillah, we say the bracha of Rafa'enu, that for the Aktsiri on the sick people, and Marie are the weak people, and they are the Talmidei Chachomim who are exerting all their efforts and toiling in Torah learning, and they are also weakened, and they also need a special bracha to keep them well and healthy. And we daven for this every single day. If Hashem judges us just once a year, then it would seem superfluous to daven Rafa'enu every day. If last year Rosh Hashanah Hashem decided when people, what's going to happen to every person, who's going to be well, who's going to get better, who's going to be sick. So answers the Gemara, Kaman Kerbiyesi. The fact that we daven every day for the sick people and the weak people, it must be that we're following Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi says that Hashem judges every day. Since Hashem judges every day, there's a place for tefillah. It could be like all the other Chachomim that we learned, that Hashem judges a person on Rosh Hashanah for everything that's going to transpire during the year. Ukter Yitzchok, and is following the opinion of Rabbi Yitzchok, the Omer Rabbi Yitzchok, Yofet Tza'oka La'odam, a crying out of a person is beneficial, Bein Kodim Gzardin, before the decree has been finalized, Bein La'achar Gzardin, and even after the decree has been finalized, there's still a benefit of crying out to Hashem, that Hashem can change the outcome of the judgment. Continues the Gemara, Tanya Omer Rabbi Yehuda Mishum Rabbi Akiva. Why did the Torah say, Heviu Omer bePesach, bring the korban Omer on Pesach, which is a korban, a mincha that was brought from barley. Down says, HaPesach Zman Tuvah, because on Pesach the produce is judged, the grains are judged on Pesach, as we saw in our Mishnah, and therefore Omar Kadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem is, so to speak, he's saying, Heviu lefonai omer b'Pesach, bring me a korban omer, a special korban from the produce on Pesach, Kadeshes Yisbarach lem Tvua Shebasodis, in order that it will help that through the judgment of Pesach, all the produce in the fields will get a bracha. Why did Hashem say that on Shavuos we bring the 2 loaves of wheat, made of wheat flour? Because the on Shavuos we saw in our Mishnah is the time that the fruits are being judged. And Omar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem is saying, Heviu lefonai shtei alechem, bring me these 2 loaves of the shtei alechem, ba'atzeres on Shavuos, kadei she'yizbaruchu lachem peris ha'ilon, in order that the peris ha'ilon, the fruits of the trees, should have a bracha. And this is Rabbi Yehuda talking, and Rabbi Yehuda viewed the wheat, which is what the shtei alechem is made of, he viewed it as a fruit, and because the fruit, we know that Adam Rishon ate from the Eitz Hadas, he ate a fruit, and Rabbi Yehuda says in Sanhedrin Daf Ayin that it was the wheat. So when the wheat is being judged on Shavuos, that is the time when the fruits are being judged on Shavuos. That's the time to bring a korban from the wheat. And indeed, the mitzvah of that we do with the fruits of Bikurim, bringing the first fruits to the Beis Hamikdash, could not be done before Shavuos. Continues the Brayso, why did the Torah say that you should pour with the korban tomid not only the wine, only over Sukkot, they would also pour on the Mizbeach water? Omar Kadosh Baruch Hu, nischu lefonei mayim b'chag, you should pour, it's part of the korban to pour before me water on Sukkot, Kadesh Baruch Hu lochem gishmi bracha, because the Mishnah we saw that regarding water the judgment is on Sukkot, and therefore in order there should be bracha in the rain that year, you should bring a special type of korban of water, which is the nisuch hamayim. It says the Brayso, Imru lefonai b'Rosh Hashanah, and on Rosh Hashanah you should say before me, and we're going to learn more about this later on Daf Lamed Daled, you should say 3 brachas, 10 psukim each, which we know in Shemona Esrei, in Musaf, on Rosh Hashanah, we say Malchiyos, 10 psukim mentioning Hashem being the king, Zechronos, 10 psukim mentioning Hashem, so to speak, remembering us, V'shofros, and 10 psukim mentioning the shofar. Malchiyos, why do we mention Malchiyos? Kadesha tamluchuni aleichem, in order that you should receive my sovereignty, my kingdom over yourselves. Zechronos, we mentioned the 10 psukim of Zechronos, Kadesha yale zechroneichem lefonai letova, in order that when I judge you, your I will be remembering you favorably. Ubameh b'shofar, how will you do this? With the shofar, with the 10 psukim of shofars, and you'll blow the shofar when saying Malchi Zechonis Shofros. In Chazoras Hashatz, we all blow the shofar at the end of each of these 3 brachas, and in the quiet Shmoneh Esrei, some people have the minhag to blow the shofar during Malchi Zechonis Shofros, and that is why we say these psukim on Rosh Hashanah. I'm judging you Rosh Hashanah, as it says in our Mishnah. Hashem judges us on Rosh Hashanah. You want this to have a favorable judgment, you should say these psukim and blow the shofar. Omer Bavo said, Lama toikin b'shofar shel ayil. Why do we blow with the shofar of a ram? Omer Kadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem is saying, Tiku lefonai shofar shel ayil. You should use a shofar of a ram. Kedei she'ezker lochem akedas yachid, akedas Yitzchok, in order that I should remember that akedas Yitzchok ben Avram, the son of Avram, Yitzchok Avinu, he was prepared to be bound on the Mizbeach, he was prepared to be offered up as a korban. It didn't happen, as we know, and in his place a ram was offered up. And to remember the tremendous zechus of Yitzchok Avinu on Rosh Hashanah, therefore we use the shofar of a ram. I will consider it on you, as if each and every one of you would be prepared to be bound on the Mizbeach and offered up as a korban to Hashem. Yitzchok, why do we blow shofar on Rosh Hashanah? Lama toikin, says the Gemara. You're asking why we blow? Hashem said you should blow shofar. What's the question? Elo lama marian, why do we do a truah, not just a tkiyah? Marian, why we do a truah? Rachmana Omar Zichron Truah. Rosh Hashanah is called Zichron Truah, a day of remembrance with a truah. The Torah says you have to do a truah. We know why you do tkiyos and truos when before Shmoneh Esrei, a time where technically speaking one's allowed to sit down, and we again blow the shofar during Chazoros Hashatz, during Shmoneh Esrei, a time when one should be standing. Why do we do the mitzvah of shofar twice in Rosh Hashanah? Answers the Gemara, because we want to confuse the Satan. When he sees how dear the mitzvahs are to us, that we're doing it not just once, we're doing it even twice, then he's going to realize how dear mitzvahs are to Klal Yisrael, and then he'll just close up all his claims. He will not be able to make a good claim, and that way we'll have a good judgment on Rosh Hashanah. Va'omer Rabbi Yitzchok, another statement from Rabbi Yitzchok, Kol shana she'ein toikin lo b'tchilasa, any year that one does not blow the shofar at the beginning of the year, meriin lo b'sofar, then at the end of the year there's a sorrowful truah at the end of that year, which means the year is not going to be such a good year. Ma'itama, why would this be true? Because you didn't have the shofar on Rosh Hashanah to confuse the Satan. If the Satan wasn't confused, he had a good case. If he puts down a good case, the judgment is sometimes not so favorable. Any year which at the beginning of the year is, so to speak, we're paupers. Rosh is a term of poverty. That when we approach the Rosh Hashanah as poor people, beseeching Hashem and davening as if we don't have anything, as if we're completely dependent on Hashem, then any year which is Sharosha B'tchilasa, that's the way we start the year, Mis Asheres B'Soifa, it will be a very good year, a very prosperous year, and a rich year by the end. Shenemer, as it says in the Pasuk, Eretz Hashem Elikecha Doirish Oisa Tomid Eine Hashem Elikecha Ba Meireshis Hashana V'ad Achres Shana. But the word Meireshis, meaning Hashem's eye, is eyes us from the beginning of the year till the end of the year. And we've seen earlier on in the Masechet that this is a source that in Rosh Hashanah Hashem judges us for everything that's going to happen for the whole year. But the word Meireshis should really have an aleph in it, and it doesn't. It's written Meireshis without. Meireshis Hashana. The Gemara says Meireshis ksiv without the aleph. Reshis without an aleph is the term used for poverty. Vad achris shana sheyesh lo achris. So when it says Meireshis Hashana, when the year starts with reshis, with coming with as if we're paupers, then ad achris shana, the word achris is used not only at the end but also that it's got a future, and it's sometimes used in the context of when things are going very, very well. It means they have an achris, so that's alluded to in this pasuk, that start the year humbly like a poor person and Emirat Hashem, by the end of the year will be a good year. Va'omer Rabbi Yitzchok, another statement from Rabbi Yitzchok, Ein donin es ha'adam elo lefi ma'asav shel osei shah. A person is only judged according to his actions, according to his level, at that point of judgment. Shenemer, as it says in the pasuk, Vayishma Elokim es koil hanar. We know that when Avram sent Yishmael away, then he was in the desert, and his water had finished, and he was dying of thirst. And Hashem heard the sound of this nar of Yishmael. Vayomer Malach Elokim el Hagar. An angel said to Hagar, Yishmael's mother, who was with him, Min Hashemayim, from the heavens, Vayomer lo Malach Hagar al tir'i ki shama Elokim es koil hanar. Don't worry, Hashem has heard the sounds of this child, Ba'asher hu sham, for where he is here and now. And Rashi brings here a medrash, that the medrash says that at that time when Hashem was, so to speak, he did a miracle to save Yishmael, because Yishmael was crying out, and the malachim, the angels, came to Hashem and says, do you know what Yishmael and his descendants are going to do to Klal Yisrael generations later? It's not worth saving him. Hashem asked them, at this point in time, is he guilty? No, he's not. I'm judging him for what he is now. Now he's not guilty of that, so now he's deserving of being saved. He's crying out to me. And that's where Rabbi Yitzchok learns from there, that from this pasuk, that Ein donin es ha'adam elo lefi ma'asav shel osei shah. Continues the Gemara, Va'omer Rabbi Yitzchok, Gimel dvarim mazkirin avonosav shel adam. There are three things that recall the aveirus of a person. Eluhein kir notui, if somebody goes under a leaning wall, and then in Shemayim they say that according to natural cause and effect, this wall could well fall on him. Is he deserving of special protection? And then they check, they recall his actions, his deeds, to see if he deserves it or not. Ve'iyun tefillah, or a person that davens with so much devotion that he's assuming and he's expecting his tefillah to be answered. And then in the heavenly courts they say he's taking it for granted that everything he's asked for he should be given. Let's see if he deserves it. And when a person says to Hashem, Hashem, you judge my friend, I can't deal with him, you take care of it. And then Hashem says, just a minute, are you worthy of your friend being judged because of you? And then they look into it, they recall his deeds, and they see, is he deserving, is he not? And the source for this would be Shenemer, as it says in the pasuk, Vatomer Sarai el Avram. Sarai said to her husband, to Avram, at the time he was called Avram, later to be Avram, Chamosi olecho, my injustice is on you. Nosati shivchosi b'chikecha, I gave my maid to you. V'atera ki harasa, and now she's conceived. V'ekel beineo yishpoit Hashem beini uveinecha. Hashem will judge between you and me. What does it say? Vayavoy Avram lispoit l'Sara v'livkoisa. Avram Avinu came to eulogize Sarah and to cry over her. She actually passed away before he did, and Avram was the one that buried Sarah. Va'omer Rabbi Yitzchok, another statement from Rabbi Yitzchok, Arba dvarim, four things, mekarin gzardinei shel adam, they tear up the decree that's decreed against a person. Ve'eluhein, tzedakah, charity, tzedakah, crying to Hashem, shinui shem, changing one's name, v'shinui meiser, changing one's deeds, one's actions. Tzedakah, where do we know that tzedakah can tear up a decree against a person? The Chsiv, it says in the pasuk in Mishli, utzedakah tatzel mimoves, that tzedakah can rescue a person from death. Tzedakah, where do we see that crying out? Will help. The Chsiv, it says in the pasuk, Vayitz'aku el Hashem, and they will cry out to Hashem, Batzar lahem, when they're in distress, Umimutzukoiseim yoitziim, and Hashem will take them away from their straits, from their narrow place, and help them. Shinui Hashem, changing a name, where do we see that's beneficial? The Chsiv, it says in the pasuk, Vayomer Elokim el Avram, Hashem said to Avram, Sarai ishtacha, your wife that was called Sarai, lo tikra shema Sarai. Don't call her Sarai anymore. Ki Sarah shema. From now her name is Sarah. Or Sivan, it says after, and it says the next pasuk, uvirachti oisa, and I will bless her. V'gam nosati mimeno lecha bein, you'll have a son from her. Uvirachti av hoisa legoyim malchi ami mimeno hiu. So you see that she was blessed after her name was changed. Shinei Maisa, changing one's deeds, where do we see that can tear up a decree against a person? The Chsiv, it says in the pasuk, by Yonah, that Yonah went to Nineveh and told them they should do tshuva. otherwise Nineveh would be overturned. Hashem saw that they changed their ways, that mended their ways. And Hashem, so to speak, he relented from doing that badness that he had planned to do to them, and he did not do it. He turned over the decree and did not turn over Nineveh. Rabbi Yitzchok only mentioned 4 things. Others say also, Shini Mokim, change of your place can help to tear up a decree against a person. It says in the Pasuk, Hashem said to Avram, Lech lecha me'aretzecha, you should go from your land, and V'hodar, in the next Pasuk it says, Ve'escha, I will make you l'goy to a great nation, V'avarechecha, I'll bless you, V'agad l'shemecha, you'll have a big name, V'yei bracha, and you will be blessed. So you see from this Pasuk that Shinui Mokim, changing place, can bring a person better fortune. V'idach, and Rabbi Yitzchok, who didn't mention Shinui Mokim, he says that Pasuk that Avraham Avinu had bracha because he left to change this place is not changing place per se. It was something unique to the place he was changing to. It was because he was going to Eretz Yisrael. Eretz Yisrael has its own merits, and a person who comes to Eretz Yisrael can be deserving of a better fortune. Continues the Gemara of Omer Rabbi Yitzchok, another statement from Rabbi Yitzchok, Chayiv Odom lahakbil pnei Rabbi, beregel, a person should try and go and receive his Rebbe, go and meet his Rebbe, beregel Yomim Tovim, shenemer, as it says in the Pasuk, that the Isha Ashunamis, she left the house to go to her Rebbe Elisha, and she didn't tell her husband that she was going. And he said, or she didn't tell him why she was going. She was going to tell Elisha that her child had died. But her husband said to her, Vayomer, Madua atoylechas elov hayoim. Why are you going to him today? Lo chodesh v'lo Shabbos. Vatomer Shalom. It's not Rosh Chodesh, it's not Shabbos, and there's a big discussion how you see from this pasuk that speaks about Rosh Chodesh and Shabbos, but you see here that Michlal, we deduce from this pasuk, the B'chodesh is Shabbos, that on Rosh Chodesh and Shabbos, if one can, depending on how far you live from your Rebbe, had it been Shabbos or Rosh Chodesh, it would indeed be appropriate to go. He was asking, it's not Rosh Chodesh, it's not Shabbos, why are you going? And Rabbi Yitzchok understood that if the pasuk assumes that on Shabbos and Rosh Chodesh one should go to see one's Rebbe, then one should also go on Yomim Tovim. Continues the Gemara of Omer Rabbi Yitzchok, Chayiv Odom l'tayres atzmei beregel, a person should purify himself before Yom Tov. Shenemer, as it says in the pasuk, and this pasuk is really talking about generally. It's not talking about especially Yom Tov, but we're soon going to deduce and prove that this pasuk can only be speaking about Yom Tov. What does it say in the pasuk? Ubenivlasom loisigo, you should not touch the carcass, the carcass of an animal, a tomei carcass, you shouldn't touch it. And we're soon going to see that this is talking to everybody, not just to koyanim, who we know they have to stay toher because they have to do the avodah in the Beis Hamikdash, but even to the rest of Klal Yisrael, that they should not become tomei. And we'll soon see it must be talking about Yom Tov. Tanya Namihachi, we saw this in a brisa. That you should not touch a tomei carcass. Can it be that a Yisrael, somebody who's not a kohen, is not allowed to touch a carcass? Talmud Loimar, it can't be. It says in the pasuk, and this pasuk is not talking about touching a carcass, which is a much more lenient type of tumah. This pasuk is talking about touching a corpse, a dead man, which the tumah of a dead man is very severe. And it says in the pasuk, tell the kohanim, the sons of Aaron, and the pasuk there continues that don't become tomei by touching a dead person. Bnei Aaron muzharim, the pasuk clearly says that kohanim must not become tomei to a dead person. Bnei Yisrael ein muzharim, but anyone who's not a kohen is not warned against that. He's allowed to become tomei. You can make a kal v'chomer. If even a severe, stringent type of tumah, kohanim muzharim, Yisrael eino muzharim, and even then, only kohanim are not allowed to become tomei. Yisraelim are allowed to tumah kala, a more lenient type of tumah of touching a carcass of an animal, a tomei, loy kol shekain, then of course the Israel is not warned, and he's allowed to become tomei. So the question is, the pasuk that says of nivlasam lo yisigo, when can that be referring to? There's no issa for Yisrael even to become tomei to a dead person, never mind to a carcass. Answers the Gemara Beregel. This was the source of Rabbi Yitzchok. It must be this pasuk is talking about Yomim Tovim. That on Yom Tov, every person should make sure that he is tahir. Continues the Gemara. Omer Reb Kruspadoi, Omer Reb Yechanan. Shloisha Sforim Niftachim b'Rosh Hashanah. So to speak, in the heavenly courts, there are 3 books open on Rosh Hashanah. Echad shel Rishoyim Gemurim, 1 for absolute Rishoyim. Ve'echad shel Tzadikim Gemurim, 1 for absolute Tzadikim. Ve'echad shel Beinonim, and 1 for somebody who's not a tzaddik, not a rasha. He's in the middle someplace. Tzadikim Gemurim, the absolute tzadikim, nichtovim, they are written, v'nichtomim, and they are signed. They are the decree is sealed, le'alta l'chaim, immediately that they are going to have a year of life. Rashoim Gemurim, the absolute rashoim, nichtovim v'nichtomim, are written and sealed, le'alta l'misa, immediately for death. Beinonim, those who are not tzaddikim, not rashoim, tluyim v'oimdim, they're, so to speak, they're hanging. Mirosh Hashanah v'ad Yom Kippurim, they are left hanging. Zachu, if they merit, and the Rambam says, if they do tshuva, and that will be their merit, then on Yom Kippur, nichtovim l'chaim, they will be written for chaim. Lo zachu, if they do not do tshuva, and do not merit, nichtovim l'misa, they will be written l'misa. And the Mefarshim here discuss how this works with the Mishnah that says, and with the Gemara we saw on Amud Aleph, that B'Rosh Hashanah they get written, and the Gzar Din is on Yom Kippur, how this works. But we're not going into that now. It's something discussed in the Rishonim. Omer Ovin, Rav Ovin says, where is this alluded to in Psukim that there are 3 Sforim? Micro, where is their pasuk? And the Gemara is going to bring 1 pasuk. First it says, in pasuk in Tehillim, Yimochu misefer chaim ve'im tzadikim ali kosevu. The literal translation of this is, they will be wiped out, they will be rubbed out of the book of life, and with tzaddikim they will not be written. So the Gemara says, from these words it tells us a little bit more about the different categories that there are. Yimochu misefer ze sifron shel Rishoyim Gemurim. The Yimochu misefer is alluding to the Rishoyim Gemurim, that they are going to be, they're going to go lemisa. Chaim, the word Chaim tells us, ze sifron shel tzadikim, that there is a book of tzadikim. V'im tzadikim ali kosevu, and from the words that you won't be written with tzadikim is ze sifron shel beinonim. That's a separate book where a person is not written, not with a Rishoyim, not with a tzadikim. He's hanging in between until Yom Kippur. Rav Nachman Beitzchok Rav Nachman Beitzchok brings a different pasuk. The pasuk says, "Va'ata im tiso chatosom ve'im ayin." Moshe Rabbeinu said to Hashem that if not, then mecheni no mesifrecha asher kosavta, wipe me out. If you're not going to hold the sin of Klal Yisrael, if you're not going to forgive them and not wipe them out, I want you to wipe me, to rub me out from your chumash, from the Sefer Torah. So from this, Rav Nachman Beitzchok says, from the words mecheni no alludes to Zeh Sifron Shel Rishoyim, to the book of the Rishoyim, Mesifrecha, from your book, Zeh Sifron Shel Tzadikim, alluding to the book of the Tzadikim, Asher Kosavta, Zeh Sifron Shel Beinonim, alluding to the 3rd book, the book of the Beinonim. And Yimir Hashem, in the next shiur, we're going to continue from here.